Today I'm going to show you how to fix this Logitech K380 keyboard with a stuck G key. It's unresponsive. This fix will probably help you fix any other membrane type keyboard, but these instructions are specific for this one. And just a quick note, this is a short edited version of this repair. I actually failed quite a few times trying to get this working, and you're going to see the results of those failures in this video. But just in the interest of keeping this video short, I'm going to show you the correct way of the correct and final way of how I ended up fixing this keyboard. So a little background, this is actually a really nice little keyboard. It's cheap. You can connect 3 different devices to it, and it sips batteries. I swear this the 2 AAA batteries in this keyboard lasted me almost 2 years. So yeah, this is a great keyboard, and it's cheap, but unfortunately it's cheap. So the issues we have here is basically if you open it up, you'll see that it's basically heat staked together. So they just melted the plastic, so it acts like a kind of a rivet. And unfortunately, to get it open, you'd have to basically break all of these heat stakes, basically these little rivets. And that is not so difficult, but putting it back together afterwards would be. So we're not going to do that. Fortunately, I figured out how to do this repair just by accessing the membrane through the key. So let me show you how this works. Basically, and you'll excuse the crude drawing here, but we got 2 membranes, kind of basically 2 pieces of plastic with the traces on the top and the bottom. And basically there's pads on the top and the bottom. And when you press the key, basically it pushes these 2 pads together and we're able to register a click. And between these 2 pieces of plastic is basically another piece of plastic with just a hole in it. And this is fused to the top membrane. And basically what this does is it just keeps these 2 contacts apart. And basically I thought I could just kind of repair the pads, because usually that's what happens, what we think is the problem. But that wasn't the problem at all. Actually, what I found out was the traces leading to these pads tend to deteriorate, because if you notice I don't know, if you just keep, I think you're pressing this button, it's going to keep flexing, and I think after a while all of this flexing just kind of deteriorates that trace. So as you can see here, this trace deteriorated a bit, and strangely enough it happened on the bottom as well, as you can see here. So basically we just need to fix those 2 traces. Normally, if this was actual like a circuit board, we could just solder on like a jumper to complete this trace. But this membrane is made of plastic, and if we try to solder it, it's just going to melt. So that is not going to work. So what we're going to do is use this. And I have no affiliation with this company or this brand, but it seemed to have good reviews. It is made in the USA, which is great, maybe. But what I liked is that they actually mentioned that it was laboratory tested to 2 million keystrokes. Whether that's true, I don't know. But it worked for me, and it actually did prove to be very robust. So hopefully this will work. This is actually not meant to be used for repairing traces. But again, we have no other way to fix this trace. So we're going to use this stuff, and I think it will hold. Okay, so what you'll need, aside from the Keypad Fix, You'll need X-Acto knife or something similar. You're going to need a multimeter, and you could probably get away without using one of these, but to know that you actually did the right job, I think you do need it. And you could get a multimeter for pretty cheap nowadays, probably like 20 bucks. You're gonna need some screwdrivers. We're gonna use toothpicks to apply that keypad fix. And we'll some other odds and ends. We got some alcohol cleaner. Excuse the Japanese on here. I'm living in Japan right now. So, but yeah, you don't need to use this. You could use isopropyl alcohol or anything like that. You'll need some cotton swab, some other things like a little paper clip, some tape. And that's about it. So let's get to it. Okay, so to disassemble this, basically, there are 6 screws. They're actually beneath these pads here. We got 4 screws here and 2 screws underneath the battery cover. So let's get that apart. So once you have the screws off, you could use a spudger to get in between the seams between the 2 parts of the case. And there are tabs that you need to kind of pop off. So just working your way around, you can split this in 2. As for removing the key, I think it's best to just pull up on it. I don't know if there's a better way, but that's just what I was doing. Just pulling up on the key. And if you're lucky, the little scissor mechanism underneath will have already fallen apart. If not, what you need to do is there's actually 2 parts to this scissor mechanism, and they are connected by kind of tabs that kind of snap into each other. So if this didn't come apart when you're pulling off the top of the key, basically what you want to do is you could use your fingernail or something to hold down this part of the scissor mechanism. And if you lift up on this other part, it should just snap out. And once you get these 2 plastic pieces separated, they're actually connected to the case by 2 hooks on the top and the bottom. And just try to unhook those, and the whole plastic scissor mechanism should just pull right out. And you could see the inside of the membrane. One thing to notice, actually, if you look at mine here, you're just going to see the trace, and you're not supposed to be able to see that. Actually, there was a little kind of silicone nub on here, which I thought contained the pad underneath that. So I kind of cut it open. I cut it off to try and get access to the pads, but I realized that there's no pads underneath that at all. So your keys should look like this. So do not touch this pad and do what I did. Okay, and actually what you'll find is this top membrane is kind of painted in this kind of black paint. There's black covering. but we could easily scrape this away to reveal the trace. And we need to do this because we are going to have to cut into this membrane. So basically what you want to do is just get a little screwdriver and gently scrape along the top of this plastic. And if you just do it really gently, you'll be able to remove that black paint, the black covering, and that will expose the trace. So you want to do that to the top and the bottom. And we're doing this because we want to see where the trace is going. And as you can see here, there is a trace on this side, but there is no trace on this other side. So basically, we want to leave the trace alone, and we are going to cut, in this case, the bottom of this membrane, because we need to get access to those pads. Okay, so this does involve cutting into this membrane, which might worry you, but you have a broken keyboard right now that you're not doing anything with, so let's fix it. So what we want to do is we want to cut this membrane, but we do not want to damage the membrane that's below it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put a piece of metal underneath this this top membrane, and if you just kind of run your fingernail through it, or just kind of, you could use a screwdriver, you can see that these two pieces of plastic, the top and the bottom part, can be separated. So what we want to do is we're going to jam a piece of metal underneath there so we could cut it, and we won't, and it will protect the bottom membrane, so we won't cut through that. So what I'm using here is actually this bit from the X-Acto knife, and these just snap off so you can get like a new sharp edge. And basically I'm just going to take this and just kind of cram it underneath there. And you want to be a little careful here. Maybe this is how I damaged the lower membrane. I probably should have kept that piece of paper I had in there, and just put the metal bit over that paper while I was like cramming it in there. That might have helped me a little bit. Okay, so with that in place, basically I have this cheap chisel that I just got at the dollar store. It's cheap, so it's not sharp. I don't think you want to use anything sharp, but I need a straight edge that I could run the X-Acto knife along, just to be neat. And we don't want this top membrane like bunching up on itself, so I think a nice clean cut will be best. All right, so after you have that cut open, you could lift up the membrane and see the pad, and you could see right here is actually the result of the other mistake I made. Is basically I tried to apply that keypad fix between the membranes, pretty much sight unseen, and I did get it in there and I got it working, but I don't recommend you do this. We really need to see what is wrong and what's wrong, where the trace has gone bad, if it has gone bad. So basically what I did here is I just kind of, I really caked that on there. So I scraped all that stuff off and inspected again. So what you want to do is you want to get you can get like a jeweler's loupe or a good magnifying glass, and you want to inspect these traces. I think this is important. You don't want to just cake on the keypad fix and hope that it's working. You want to know what's wrong. Because what happened is I got this working and then it would just die after a few days. And I didn't know why. So actually, after finally really inspecting the traces, I found this damage. And again, this is what, this was the damage on the top pad. And here's the damage on the bottom pad. So this was important. So now I know what's wrong with this keyboard and with this with this key. So we need to repair those traces. You want to be able to find this damage. What you could do is use your voltmeter, your continuity tester. And what you want to do is you'll apply one lead onto the pad and one lead, the other lead you're going to scrape along the ribbon cable to try to find a connection where that trace leads. And what you want to do is, and so if you just kind of scrape this along the ribbon cable, and if you do not get, if it doesn't register continuity, then you know there's a bad trace there. But you do want to be careful because what happened is I actually got this working, so there was a connection, but since the trace deteriorated, it would work, and then it would not work if the cable flexed. It would just break connection. So you want to know, what's broken. So we have a bad connection. So after inspecting and finding out where the damage the trace was, I actually had to get access to that trace. And so that middle layer of plastic kind of fused to the top layer protects that trace. So what I had to do was use my X-Acto knife to scrape along the side. You want to stay away from the trace because we don't want to damage that trace. But where that little hole that separates the top and the bottom pads, basically I just ran my X-Acto knife along the side here. And I was able to get it to lift up a bit. And once I got that up a bit, I was able to get the X-Acto knife kind of under the part where it lifted up, and then I was able to cut through it, so all the way to the side. And once I got that done, I used some tweezers to lift up that layer of plastic, and I was able to peel that layer of plastic up. So I did it to one side, and then I did it to the other side, and then I peeled it back. And what you'll find, it will look a little something like, it'll look like this. So now you have the exposed trace. So what I did is, just to check, I used the continuity tester again, and this time I held one lead to the other side of this damaged trace, so away from the pad, where I knew it should be connected, still connected to that ribbon cable. So I held one lead here, and then I buzzed it again, and as you could see here, it registered. So we know there's a good connection all the way to this ribbon cable. So the damage is this messed up trace. So this is the part we're going to fix. Okay, but I also did this test on the bottom pad as well. And actually on the bottom pad, the traces are exposed. Like there's nothing covering them at all. So you don't have to peel any plastic back. You could hold your lead on the pad and check for connection. You could hold your lead along the trace and check for connection. And I don't know why it's damaged on the bottom. This could have been because when I was trying to repair this earlier, I might have damaged it myself. But definitely on the top membrane, that trace was protected by that middle layer of plastic. So basically, the damage was within that plastic. So I'm pretty sure it just deteriorated on its own. Okay, so we know that there's a problem here. So we know there's a problem with the trace, so let's fix it. Okay, so before we apply the keypad fix, basically we want to rig this up so after applying it, these two membranes don't touch each other, because that would just mess things up. So what I'm just using here is just a paper clip, and I'm putting it underneath the top membrane and just taping it off. So we could still lift it up, apply the keypad fix, and then just drop it back down. Okay, so we want to prepare the keypad fix, and basically you want to make sure you mix this really well. Get all along the sides, the bottom, and I could tell that there is a lot of dense material in here that is not mixed in. So I'm going to mix that up. Mix that up for like about even maybe like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And once that's nice and mixed up, we are just going to use the toothpick to apply a layer onto that trace. And unfortunately, I'm not set up to show you video of this. It's just a bit of a tight fit. But while I was testing this on paper, you could kind of see how I applied it. Basically, you just want to put a little bit on the toothpick and just very lightly, you're going to put some on the trace, just as I'm doing on the paper here. Okay, then after that, you just want to let it sit overnight. Just one thing to keep in mind, though, is you want to kind of make sure the top layer is kind of lying flat. So just be careful when you're when you're using that paper clip to prop it up. You don't want it to dry bent, because afterwards when you lay it flat again, it'll crack, because this stuff will dry hard. And you'll see a little bit of the cracking in the end result that I got. Okay, so it's the next day, so let's check it out. And actually, I'm a bit embarrassed to show you what kind of the end result here, because this will show more of the mistakes I made. Actually, what I did was I actually ended up applying that keypad fix to the pad again. This was, I think, my second try. This could have been my third try. I think the fourth try was the one that finally got it going, but it was one of the second or the third. So I was about to scrape it off again, but the trace was coming apart. So I decided I better not mess around with it too much. So what you're going to see is kind of a mess, but basically, I think the main thing you want to focus on is that trace. So don't get it on the pad because it's really not necessary. And basically, what you'll also see here is since I got it on the pad, the distance between the top and the bottom membrane is kind of reduced. So basically, it was registering as connected like the whole time. So what I did was I ended up putting tape as just tape around the middle of the membranes to just give myself a little more space to separate the top and the bottom membrane. But I think if you don't mess around with the pad, you won't have to do this. You just apply the Keypad Fix to the trace where it's broken. And you could be a little liberal. But you want to make sure that you don't apply too much where after it's all dried and then kind of ready to go again, where the connections on the top membrane and the bottom membrane are closed, basically, where they're touching. So if they do end up, maybe if you did put too much, you could use tape, at least to cover up the trace. So just keep in mind that, like when you're finally assembling everything together again. But I checked mine, and well, so in my case I had to use tape, but hopefully you won't have to use any for yours. So we might as well test it. So again, we're going to use our voltmeter again, and well, this time we're definitely going to put one lead on the pad and try to buzz it out. And that looks good. So great. Okay, so basically we just have to put everything back together. So reassembly of the case should just be the opposite of how we took it apart. As for the key and the scissor mechanism, that is a little trickier. So basically, again, what holds the scissor mechanism onto the keyboard are these two hooks that are on the top and the bottom. And basically what you want to do is you want to take the big piece, and it should be orientated with this side up. And what you want to do is just, we have these holes on the top here. We want to hook those on the top hooks. Okay, once we have that done, now is the tricky part is basically we want to take the smaller piece, and again, it should be orientated with this side up. This is really important because if you don't have this side up, it's going to come apart really easily. So you want to make sure the side is up. And what you want to do is take this, kind of like lift the big plastic piece up a little bit along the bottom. And there are these kind of tabs on the smaller piece, and you want to hook those tabs underneath the bottom hooks. This is not easy, but just keep at it, and you will get it. Basically, you hook once you get that hooked under, then you have these two tabs on the side. And basically you just let that rest flat you let it rest on the top, on the bigger plastic piece, and you could just push it down on either side and it will snap into these holes on either side. Okay, so with those snapped in, basically you just take the key and you just snap it down, and there you go. So actually let's test this out. And it's registering, and there you go. Your keyboard is all fixed. So how good of a fix is this? Well, basically, if you look at when this video is uploaded, basically what I'm going to do is if this keyboard breaks within 6 months from when I uploaded it, I'm just going to delete this video, in which case you would have never seen it. And but if you look down there and it's been longer, you could see that it's still working. If it breaks after 6 months, I will just post an update and let you know what happened. But as long as this is up and as long as there's no update, this keyboard is working just fine. So if you were able to fix yours, please leave a comment down below and let us know how it went. And let us know if it was the trace, because I think that might be a common problem with these. That top part with the trace, it will be flexing throughout its lifetime. So I think eventually it just, kind of deteriorates. So let us know if that was it, and it might help other people when they're trying to fix theirs. So all right, guys, take care.